Paris summit, we had important speeches, important arguments made by some African leaders in the likes of William Ruto and Cyril Ramaphosa, looking into the eyes of the Western leaders and telling them the truth. Because this whole manipulation of Africa has overdue. It's been for long, we've been accepting these things, and today we should know that the youth of Africa are refusing this, and our leaders are gradually seeing things our way. They are looking into our eyes and then seeing the wahalas, the problems we have, and the way we perceive these things, and they are speaking their minds now because they know they have the support of the African youth. We are resilient, and we have this resentment when we hear only of good speeches every day and no action. You know, we have a lot of good speeches. They make a lot of speeches, a lot of promises, and these promises are fallacious promises. Salut les amis et bienvenue sur cette vidéo. Le président sud-africain, dans ce sommet en France, à Paris, a dit des choses claires, nettes et vraies. En fait, les amis, je veux vous suggérer d'écouter attentivement le président sud-africain, Cyril Ramaphosa. Il va parler en anglais et je sais que vous êtes bilingue, vous connaissez, hein, vous allez, d'autres vont expliquer aux autres qui n'ont pas compris en commentaire ce que le président sud-africain a dit en quintessence. Les amis, I suggest that we watch this video, listen keenly to the South African president, how he presents the situation. Les amis, et juste après, I'm going to explain to you what he said in some few words, in English, if you want in French. Let's listen to the South African president, dear friends.
You know, recently, 7 African countries decided to go and put a call for peace to Ukraine and to Russia. And we raised a number of issues. Zambia was represented, Comoros was represented, Republic of Congo was represented, Senegal was represented, Uganda, as well as South Africa. So we were all represented, and Egypt as well. So we were all at one, that even as we were going to address an issue of the war which has had a negative impact on the African continent, which is the rise in prices for food, rise in prices for fertilizers, we were clear that we are not going there as beggars. We're not going to ask for a favor to both Ukraine and Russia. We were going there to say, open up the Black Sea Channel so that the grains and the fertilizers should go into the world market. So we were not on a begging mission, even as we are in great need as a continent and all that. That should go to demonstrate that Africa should never be seen as a continent that needs generosity. We want to be treated as equals. Even in the multilateral institutions, we want to be treated as equals. And if our equity is at a low ebb, there must be ways in which that can be addressed. To us, this is very important. Our sovereignty is one of the things that we hold on dearly to. And we demonstrated that very clearly to both President Zelensky and to President Putin when it came to this issue. Even as there were suggestions that, yes, we can donate this, we can donate that, we said, we want you to release these grains and fertilizers to the world market so that the world can trade in these commodities and other issues we can handle in a different way. I wanted to make that point so that it should be understood where Africa has evolved up to. We want to be key players on the world stage, want to be key players even in the financial markets and in the MDBs. Now, these are the positive things. I do, Mr. President Macron, want us to address another issue, which to us is a bit of a negative. You will have heard President Sisi talking about the 100 billion that was promised in Paris. President Sassou Nguesso yesterday as well also spoke about it at the dinner. Now, there is that issue that a number of the commitments that have been made have not really been fully lived up to. But before I get into details, let me immediately say that we recognize the many initiatives that have been put on the table, and a number of countries here have done so. Germany has gone out of the way to put a number of initiatives, And the US has also done a number of things. But there have been times when we felt like we were beggars. I played a key role as chair of the African Union during the COVID period. We felt like we were beggars when it came to vaccine availability, when we felt we needed access to vaccines, and the Northern Hemisphere countries had bought all the vaccines in the world, and they were hogging them. And they didn't want to release them at the time when we needed them most. And we felt like we were begging. And at times it felt like they would just be droppings from the table, that yes, we will give you that and that. And let me tell you something that generated a lot of resentment. We resented that, and it got worse when we said we want to manufacture our own vaccine. And when we went to the WTO, there was a lot of resistance, enormous resistance. And we kept saying, what is more important, life or profits by your big pharmaceutical companies? And that too, I must tell you now, generated and deepened that disappointment and resentment on our part, because we felt like life in the Northern Hemisphere is much more important than life in the global South. And these are issues that need to be addressed. And I'm glad that we are all seated here like this, because we've got to get to the heart of these matters and address them. Now I come to promises that have been made. And Chancellor Schulz was saying, we've got to walk the talk. Yes, we want to see the talk being walked. President Sassou Nguesso yesterday said at the dinner, $100 billion was promised per year. And he was saying, I've never seen that. And many of us will testify that that $100 billion has never really been made available. And this should stand out as something that needs to be addressed.
Listen.
Because sometimes we sit at conferences like this and say, yes, we'll make this available, and we believe you. We believe you, but now the tire must hit the tar. We must now see action flowing from that. Now, I want to then talk about something very practical. President Sassou Nguesso raised it yesterday. He said he would be happy if flowing from this summit, we do something very practical on the infrastructure side. Having said that 600 million people in Africa do not have electricity, and yet we've got all the resources to generate electricity, particularly the mighty Congo River. And that there have been plans to build a number of power stations that will generate, in my calculation, up to 70,000 megawatts. And he said, and I want to speak in support of this proposal, that to prove that these summits are not summits where we just talk, flowing from the Paris COP as well as others, let us now put money on the table and collectively say we are going to address this mega project. A mega project which will in the end generate electricity for up to 12, 15 African countries all at one go. And this is a project that I think the multilateral development banks here working together, the call that you've made, President Macron, can actually fund. And where, as we rise from this, we should be able to say the Inga Dam is now going to be developed into the Inga Power Station, the one that President Sassou Nguesso mentioned, and the next one as well. If we can do that, then we as Africans will now be convinced that these summits are really meaningful. We will now go home and say, you know what, it's worthwhile going to these summits, coming to Europe, and to listen to all the promises because they are willing to act on the promises. This is what President Macron, I believe, will be one of the most important outcomes. The reform of the financial architecture, as well as a practical project, infrastructure project that is going to add a lot of value. President Sisi and I have been talking about a railway from Cape Town to Cairo for years. We will leave that for the next summit, but the one on generating electricity and building power stations on the Inga Dam is the most important, that is immediate, that I believe needs to be addressed now. Let's get that done, and then we will be convinced that you are serious with the promises that you make.
Vous avez compris, les amis. Donc, c'est cette litanie des promesses. faites par les Occidentaux pour réaliser des infrastructures essentielles ici en Afrique, les projets d'électrification, les projets de construire d'autres infrastructures. Dans des sommets, ils ont fait ces promesses-là. Ils n'ont jamais réalisé cela. Et le président sud-africain a pris des exemples. Par exemple, exemple est donné. Et dit au président français Macron et au Lachauve que nous ne sommes pas des gens qui viennent commander. D'ailleurs, nous sommes allés à l'Ukraine pour les demander d'ouvrir la mer Noire et mettre les produits dans le marché mondial. Oui, nous ne sommes pas venus commander les choses. On est allé à Russie exactement la même chose. Donc, il faut nous respecter. Vous savez, cette histoire d'embargo qu'ils ont mis contre certaines personnes et tout, en train de jouer un sale tour. Et d'autres personnes comprennent aujourd'hui, d'autres chefs d'État africains ont compris aujourd'hui qu'il y a trop de l'enfumage dans les paroles données par l'Occident. Trop de mensonges. Ils disent des choses, ils organisent des sommets, ils disent des choses, ils font des promesses qui ne réalisent jamais ou les promesses irréalisables même souvent. Et c'est cet état de choses qui fait en sorte que l'Afrique et les Africains que nous sommes sont fatigués de ces gens. Fatigués de leurs mensonges, fatigués de leur façon de voir les gens, fatigués parce qu'ils veulent imposer tout à tout le monde et à tout moment. Oui, il a pris l'exemple sur ce que Denis Sassou Nguesso du Congo a dit, sur ce qu'il a parlé avec Al-Sisi de l'Égypte. C'est de ça qu'il est question. So, for all of these things, these are some realities we live in Africa. We live this in our continent. We have the resources. We want to develop these resources, but we have fake promises every day coming from people who have the technology. And like he said, this international institution should integrate Africans in the functioning. If not, Africans are sorry going to leave these institutions because it will be playing a negative or nefast role in the development of our continent. Les amis, ça sera tout. God bless you. Bye bye.